All right, just make sure I have audio and then you can get out of here.
Cool. Framing okay?
Yeah, everything looks fine. I think I'm up. I'm just gonna listen to. Do I have audio? I don't have any audio.
Who doesn't have audio?
I don't have any audio.
I don't know why you wouldn't.
Let's try restarting it.
Cool.
From the Walton's live streams that we do once a month. These we do every week on Thursdays at 3 o'clock. waltonsinc.com/live. There's also a link to it on Meatgistics. Are the best places to watch them. We don't do giveaways here. We're just talking about meat processing issues, answering any of your meat processing questions, product questions, anything like that. Today we're going to focus on shelf stability and shelf life of both products and seasonings. The seasonings ones is super simple. We'll get into a couple of things you can do to extend the shelf life, but in general it is what it is there. For your meat products, there are a ton of different things we can do to extend the shelf life of your products. But before we get to that, a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. One is we, a while ago, bought waltons.com. Normally our website is waltonsinc.com, but the person who had waltons.com failed to reserve it or whatever you do on that, and we grabbed it. So now you can go to just waltons.com instead of waltonsinc.com. It'll send you to the same place. But it is, oh, it's Patrick. Somebody walked in, I couldn't see you from the light. But it will send you to the same place. So all good there. Let me, what was wrong? Oh, okay. Sounds good. So another thing for Meatgistics users, we really do want you to download the app from the App Store. We have a way to communicate directly with you guys through there, through a service we can use. So to encourage you people to do that, I have a scheduled coupon going out that's only going out through that, and it's going to give you a decent discount on your next order. So go to the Play Store, download the Meatgistics app, and you'll get a coupon a little bit later today. I've got it all set up and ready to go. Hi, Bob. Nice to see you here. Let's see. Yep. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about for shelf stability and longevity of your product is pH. pH stands for potential of hydrogen, and how it relates to meat processing is the lower the pH of your product, the longer shelf life it will have. The higher pH of your product, the shorter shelf life it'll have. But those are both double-edged swords. When we have a really low pH, the product will last a long time, but it's not going to bind with water as well. So you're going to end up with a drier product. If you do a sausage that's, you add encapsulated citric acid, you lower the pH some other way, it's going to last a really long time, but it's not going to be as tender and as moist. Now for a snack stick, that's not the end of the world. Even for a summer sausage, it's not the end of the world. But when we're talking about cured sausages, things like ethnic sausages that we're going to cure and smoke, those you do want some nice juiciness to it. So it's a balancing there, because as you raise the pH of the meat, you're going to increase the amount of negative ions that are available for the water to bond with. So it's chemically bound, but the higher the pH also, the shorter the shelf life is going to be. The reasoning for that is botulism is one of the main things that we're worried about when we're doing a cured and smoked sausage. The reason for that is it is absolutely the perfect environment when we're smoking a sausage to replicate botulism, or for botulism to replicate. It's meat, it's moist, and it's really warm. We're gonna smoke them at, about 170, 180 degrees tops. It is absolutely perfect for the replication of botulism. That's why we add sodium nitrate. A lower pH, that acidic environment, is gonna force that botulism to stay in its cell. It's going to not be able to open up its cell walls, bring in moisture, bring in proteins, things it needs to replicate, because if it does, it's gonna kill it. So it's going to spend all of its energy trying to prevent anything from getting into it. At a higher pH, you have more water, but everything wants to grow more, not just botulism. There's tons of other things that want to grow in that environment. More water, so it's better. It can grab just as much or more stuff than it would be able to at a neutral pH. When I say stuff, I mean, things it needs to survive, things it needs to replicate. So higher pH, bad for shelf life. Lower pH, good for shelf life. Another really important thing for shelf stability is water activity. So what I have here is a water activity monitor. This, you can't really see it, but this is a tiny little cup. There's a line about halfway up that we fill up product until it's just below that line. We then open this little chamber and put the little cup in there, close it, and in here is a mirror and a fan. And what's gonna happen is that fan is gonna blow over the meat, and any water that's free in there, any water that's not bound up, is going to evaporate, and it'll get trapped on that mirror up top. This machine then reads that amount of water and tells us what our water activity is. We'll get to something else with that in the future, but for right now, these are awesome units, but I think this is like a couple $1,000s at least. So it's not really practical for the home user to have. The two things that we really want to use to measure pH are going to be, to measure shelf stability are pH and water activity. This is a simple pH meter from Milwaukee, and we sell these. They're inexpensive for anyone who's wanting to do some shelf stability testing. This is an absolute must-have. It also can work well if you're doing dry cured sausage that you're using a starter culture with, or if you're using like a TSPX, because not only will this measure the pH, but it also measure the temperature at the same time. When we're using a starter culture, we need to see certain pH drops within a certain period of time. So it might be in the first, 14 hours, it's got to drop from X pH down to this pH. This will allow you to monitor that, or at least test for it. You don't want to leave it in the sausage, but you can test for that. And not expensive. I will post a link to the chat here in a second. But before we do that, if you had the pH and the water activity on it, would you know what to do with that? No, because there's just two numbers. That's not really going to help us out at all. Somebody let me know if you can see that link. I know we've been having problems with links in the chat here recently, but this link I just sent you, it's from Wisconsin's meat department, the Wisconsin College Meat Department, is going to allow you to input those two numbers, the pH and the water activity, and it's going to give you whether or not that product is unlikely, likely, or like definitely going to grow bacteria. So that's an awesome tool. I use it all the time when we're trying to do different styles of jerky. And for anyone who listened to the podcast we just released, we have absolutely, I don't want to come off sounding cocky here, but we nailed finally tender jerky. I mean, not tender where it's like tender to bite into, but like truly tender jerky. It is, you can do like the worm with it even after leaving it out at room temperature with no vac sealing or anything overnight. Came in the next morning, it was still totally flexible. So what did we do there? We didn't do anything with pH. What we did was water activity. We took jerky that we cut just a little bit thinner than we had in the past. We then added our 20% brown sugar, which yes is a lot, and then we added 18% in low sodium soy sauce. Then we added a little bit of rice wine vinegar, a little bit of lemon juice concentrate. We vac tumbled it and let it sit in that overnight. Another thing that we did that I don't even think I brought up yesterday or during the podcast was we used a meat tenderizer, just one of those simple hand crank ones, and we tenderized all the meat first. So then we smoked it with a specific smoke schedule, which we are gonna do full video on this, and we're gonna do some testing on how to do it better at home. And it's just, it's awesome. It's probably my favorite thing that I've created. And it was all by myself. I didn't have any help by anybody here at all. Okay, cool. So everyone can see that. Hi from Victoria. Hey, Papa Sop. John Belvedere, Tim Evers, and Bob Flyboy No More is here once again. So these two tools are incredibly important for testing your product's shelf stability. It's one of the reasons we always say when you're doing jerky at home, when you're doing anything at home, you're not going to really be able to confirm that it's shelf stable without tools like this. So even if you made jerky and it's dry as can be, you added nitrate, you know it was clean, good meat before you began processing, treat it as uncured or fresh meat. I mean, it's just the best thing to do. Your jerky, vac seal it and put it in the fridge. It's going to keep it for way longer, and it's going to keep you safe, because there is nothing worse, I imagine at least, than giving people food poisoning. Thank God it's not happened to me. I'd feel absolutely terrible. You never want to take something that you're proud of, give it to other people, and have it harm them, obviously. So what sugar does, and again, forgive me, I do tend to point this one out a lot. Sugar bonds the water. So if you put sugar into a meat product and you add water, that sugar is going to grab that water, and then that water won't be available for anything else. It's bound up with the sugar. So it can't grow any type of microbes on it. It won't register on a water activity, because this is just measuring free water, not bound water. And that water will be bound by the sugar. So what are the things we can do to extend the shelf life of our product? Absolutely, the number one thing you can do is sanitize. This Maxim hard surface sanitizer is something we use all the time in here before I begin any processing of any kind. My grinder gets fully sanitized. I hit the plates, the knives, the throat, the pan. I shoot some down the throat of it, and I let it sit there for 60 seconds. That's what the amount of time that takes to kill off anything we're concerned about. Any cutting boards, anytime I'm using meat lugs, poly pans, all of that gets sanitized. You should also do that with your stuffer, your mixer, anything like that. The less microbes, bacteria, whatever that's on your meat when you begin, the better chance you have of having a shelf-stable product. Some of the bacteria that we're worried about is capable from going from a single cell to over, I think, 4 million in just 12 hours, something like that. It's unbelievable. Now, those are under ideal conditions. That would be your meat sitting out for long periods of time, 8 hours at room temperature. I hope everyone knows that if that happens, that meat needs to be thrown out. Absolutely cannot be used. You want to treat all meat until it's been cooked, cured, smoked as fresh and keep it out of the danger zone. That is from 40 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit for no more than 20 minutes, unless we're in the cooking process. While it's in the smoker, while it's on the grill, that's obviously a very, very different thing. But it is super simple and really, really important. Sanitize equipment, even your knives, anything before. And it's not like I don't aggressively clean everything in between usage. Like when that's done, after I've processed on it, that is scrubbed totally clean. So I'm not worried about the last time meat touched it. I'm worried about what touched it in between then and now. Was I handling raw chicken over here and some of it splashed up there? I mean, anything's possible. So always sanitize. It's gonna probably be the second most effective thing you can do to extend your shelf life. Probably the most important thing you can do to extend your shelf life is, does anyone want to take a guess at it? I will give everyone just a couple minutes to take a guess at what the most important thing you could do to prevent or to extend the shelf life of your product be. When did you add the jerky seasoning? Did you add it with the sugar, soy sauce? Yep. So what I did was measured out the correct amount of seasoning, measured out the rest of the ingredients. I put that and the soy sauce into my tumbler and I mixed it up all in there. So everything at once. So nope, not keeping pH level under 5 would absolutely be important. But when we're doing certain products, we're not going to do that. So I should be a little bit more clear. What's the most important thing you can do after it's been cooked to extend the shelf life of the product? But yeah, keeping everything cold while processing is so important on more than just shelf stability, especially with grinding. The difference between when I get a pork butt from the store, cut it up, do the first grind, and then do the second grind, and when I have time to cut it up, freeze it, and then do that is night and day. The first grind is going to be fast pretty much no matter what. But that second grind, if that meat is nice and cold, that auger can grip it so much better. Push it right down to the plate and knife, and second grind is like a dream. Yep, Bob, vac seal and freeze. But yeah, no, minimizing your water activity is also a good one. Yep, so Jawad Khan, vacuum seal. The difference between vacuum sealing and putting something in Tupperware is absolutely night and day. When you put a thing in Tupperware, all you're doing is preventing that product from moisture loss. You're not extending its shelf life at all. I know I occasionally will put something in a piece of Tupperware in my kitchen and it goes to the back and I see it, you know, a week and a half later and it's growing something on it. When I vac seal something, I don't worry about that at all. I just vac seal it and put it in my fridge and I'm good. I can go to it a week later, 2 weeks later, depending, obviously. There are certain things that you don't, fresh, uncooked meat, you don't want to just leave in there for long periods of time. So I did a little science experiment. I've got ground chicken cutlets that I altered the pH on. Then I've got ground chicken and chicken cutlets that I did not alter the pH on. You can't see from there, but this is a thick, white, milky substance. This grew in 2 days. This bag, you can kind of see it, is starting to puff up. I'm gonna leave this out for another day or two and I'll try and take pictures and post it on social media. I'm a little bit surprised that this isn't more puffy than it is. I really thought I would be seeing this bag pushing its barrier limits at the moment. My initial thought on this is that I would cut the bag open, and the only thing I could think of to do it was to compare the smell between what we altered the pH on and what we didn't. But I was politely reminded that I don't work by myself in this building, and other people might object to the smell of bad chicken getting up into the air. Now, as you can see on both of these, I didn't actually pull a vacuum. The reason being is because I wanted air in there to interact with all of that. I wanted to see what it was going to do. If we pulled out all the air, food would have still spoiled, but there wouldn't have been anything growing on it because most of the bacteria we're worried about is anaerobic, right? Anaerobic? Yeah, anaerobic. It needs oxygen to reproduce. And then the other thing people do a lot, sorry, I'm grabbing something to drink. People wrap their meat a lot. They'll use either butcher paper or freezer paper. The differences between those two things is butcher paper is unlined. Freezer paper has a wax lining on one side of it. The wax lining is going to make it much better at keeping air out. With butcher paper in commercial processing plants, if they still use it, they'll go ahead and wrap it and then wrap a plastic wrap around the outside to give it some added protection. The advantage of that over a vac seal is speed and cost. Well, really just cost. The downside is that a vac seal is going to protect your product better and longer. Some of these guys who've been wrapping meat for years are really, really, really good at it. And they can get it very close to a vac seal. But it takes a long time to get that good. They have to train those people to do it. Whereas you put a vacuum sealer in front of somebody, they're just as good as anyone else at the end of, a single shift. So yeah, vac sealing, absolutely better than wrapping with either butcher paper or freezer paper, or even butcher paper and plastic wrap. So, but people still do that. I seem to see it a lot more in wild game. I think that is because a lot of people are still taking their deer to their local processor, and that's how they do it for them. I've got an example of this. Hold on. Ooh. So we've got a deer quarter here that we vac sealed. This is a rather large bag, which gives us the ability to put the entire thing in a single bag. Most people at home aren't going to have a chambered machine that will handle this entire cut of meat. So what they'll do is they'll just break it down before they vac seal it. They'll take off any meat that they want. My recommendation with deer is generally take the back straps, take the tenderloins, and grind the rest. Deer jerky is excellent. So if you wanted to just freeze some of those roasts, or at least partially freeze them, then slice them and cut them up into jerky, or grind it all, use it for sticks, use it for summer sausage. That, in my opinion, really is the best use of non-backstraps and non-tenderloins. But then the other important thing that we're doing to extend the shelf life of our product is deep freeze. We've got a lay down deep freeze here, which is open at the moment because I didn't close it from putting this in or getting this out. Sorry about that. That's awesome because it's going to maintain a steady temperature. Some deep freezes will cycle on and off, a lot like an electronic smoker will do, just the opposite way. You can get them where they're just the steady deep freeze. They keep a single temperature all the time. Our biggest problem with that one is that when we're doing podcasts, we have to turn it off because the motor on it is somewhat loud and can be picked up by these sensitive microphones. And then we forget to turn it back on. That's happened more than a few times. All right, let me run through chat real quick. Yep, so Sinister MD says, yep, you're only preventing moisture loss with Tupperware. Thank you. So it is aerobic, not anaerobic. What cut of beef did Tax roast beef use? Racks. John, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. So Lee asks, what's the shelf life on summer sausage? I mean, there's a few different answers there. Is it a traditional summer sausage where they used a starter culture? Then they're dry curing it, and it's not infinite, but it is years. If we're talking about one that we added nitrate to and then went ahead and smoked and heat treated right then, if you're not vac sealing it and deep freezing it, it's just a couple of days. I mean, the nitrate definitely helps, but it's not a cure-all that's going to let you leave, snack sticks opened or summer sausage opened in your freezer forever. I believe the USDA is 5 days on products like summer sausage snack sticks. John Surwick says, what cut did Tex roast beef use? John, are you talking about Tex on Meatgistics with his What Did Everyone Eat Today post? I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. There is also some anti-mold stuff that we can add. There is sodium tripolyphosphate that you would add 1 pound per 100 pounds to a fresh sausage and 3 pounds to 100 pounds for cured sausage. That's going to help prevent anything from growing in it. The problem with sodium tripolyphosphate is, I don't have the link for it. Thought I did. I'm sorry. Sodium lactate. Sodium lactate, you're going to add 1 pound to 100 pounds, I think. Let me double check myself right now. Sometimes trying to get information out of my head isn't always the best. Yeah, sodium tripolyphosphate is going to add moisture to it. It is sodium lactate. Sodium lactate is what you would add. Sorry about that, guys. Yep, there it is. I'm going to post a link to it. Now, the problem with that is the smallest amount we have it in is a gallon, and it's $30 a gallon. I mean, it is fairly pricey for people to be adding for home processors. It really is more of a commercial application. And it is used 1.5 pounds in a fresh sausage to 100 pounds, or 1.5%. Use 3 pounds for a smoked sausage. But it does really help the growth of bacteria, or help prevent the growth of bacteria in your food. So if you were looking for a single additive other than nitrite, because nitrite's going to be the easiest one to use, it would be sodium lactate, which is right there, which I hope you guys can see again. So Sinister MD is saying, when cooked at high temperatures, they form nitrosamines. Yep, absolutely. This is why there is a regulated amount of ingoing nitrates on bacon. There's different for dry rub and for injected. Reasoning behind that is exactly that. If you char bacon and it has too high of a level of nitrates, absolutely a carcinogen. Yep, so Lee, you've seen summer sausage on the shelf, not in the refrigerator. That is summer sausage that they either use like a starter culture on, or they used TSPX, things to get fermentation on. So that is a different thing than what we generally do. We do now carry TSPX and a few other things like that, but we just haven't had the time to truly dive deeply into that entire world. So when we're talking about summer sausage, we're talking about just ground up meat that we've added any additives to, seasoning, plus nitrite, and then we have smoked and heat treated it right then. Or if we're not adding a cure accelerator, like encapsulated citric acid, we're gonna go ahead and wait 12 hours and then smoke and heat treat it. Encapsulated citric acid is also the most popular way to drop the pH of your meat. It does more than two things, but the two main things encapsulated citric acid does is it's going to let you go directly from stuffing your sausage to the smoking process, and it's also going to add tang to a sausage. Now, some people like the tang, some people do not like the tang. I tend to really enjoy it, so I add it to pretty much everything I'm doing, even sweeter sausages like habanero barbecue. I'm still going to add that encapsulated citric acid. There are other things you can use aside from encapsulated citric acid and still get cure accelerating. One of them is sodium erythorbate. Advantage of sodium erythorbate is that it's not going to add any tang to your meat. The downside to that is 7/8 of an ounce of sodium erythorbate is enough to process or to speed the cure up on 100 pounds of meat. So you're going to need a scale that's very, very accurate at low weights if you want to use sodium erythorbate at home. The other thing you can use is smoked meat stabilizer. That will impart a slight tang, but it's nowhere near as strong as encapsulated citric acid. Now, for encapsulated citric acid, we recommend that you use 4 ounces to 25 pounds of meat for a cure accelerator. Some places recommend 3. We do 4 because when a lot of commercial processors are doing this, they do 100-pound batches and they put in 16 ounces and they know it's going to be safe. They know the pH is going to be correct on that. So, I mean, I think our bags used to be like 3-point-something pounds, and we just said, no, forget it. Let's make it 4. Let's have home guys being able to do the exact same thing as commercial meat processors. Oh, Sinister MD, you're local? Thank you for joining us. For anyone who's local, feel free to stop by. I don't have a ton of time, but I'd be more than happy to give you a tour of the place. Also, I will extend this offer to anyone who wants to come by. If I have some of that jerky I made, I will 100% give you some. Not much, but I will absolutely give you some. I'm really, really proud of it. And I have basically a whole deer in there, and I'm going to do it with venison. And if that works, I mean, either commercial processors are going to have to start doing that with their deer, or everyone's going to do it at home, because it is awesome. Trying not to sound too pleased with myself about that, but I really, really am. All right, a couple other things you can do. We sell oxygen scavengers. They're the little things, you've seen them in bags. They usually say like, don't eat on them, not the silicone ones, but these take any oxygen. If you put them into a bag with oxygen, it's not going to absorb the oxygen and crimp that, make the bag suck tighter to it. What it's going to do is it's going to use up that oxygen, and what will be left is just inert air. There won't be anything that aerobic bacteria can use. So I will post a link to that too. Here's a downside to that. I think the smallest bag we sell them in is 100. And once you've opened that bag, once those have touched air, they're going to activate, and you're not going to be able to, if you don't use them right now, you're going to lose them. So if you're doing huge processing, I know some guys up in New York specifically, they get 6 or 7 guys around with 6 or 7 deer, and they do it all at once. So if you're doing something like that, then it might be worth it, just as you're packaging it, cut that bag open and throw them in each one. That will definitely help out with shelf life. But that also, potassium sorbate is a good thing to use for shelf life extension. And potassium sorbate it helps just stop the growth of bacteria. Another one is deer and wild game rinse. This one is really important for hunters. You can mix up a small batch of deer and wild game rinse, put it in a little spray bottle like this, and just leave it in your car or back with whatever your other supplies are back at camp. And then spray it heavily around the wound. You don't have to spray the entire thing, but just all around the wound. It's gonna slow, or possibly, depending on how clean it is, even stop the growth of anything. Part of the reason that a lot of people complain about gamey taste of deer is how it's processed. They've done tests in the past where they drop deer, and I don't think it was beef, it was something else, off at local plants, and they had them treat them basically exactly the same, and people weren't able to identify what was made with venison and what was made with, maybe it was beef. So a lot of it is in how the meat is handled. Obviously, a good amount of it also is whatever the diet of the animal was. 100% plays a large role, but how it's processed absolutely plays a huge role in the finished taste. We already did that. Deer and wild game rinse. And the HACCP thing. Okay, I already posted the thing to Wisconsin EDU. One option that's open to a lot of people, and something people don't normally take advantage of, if you live around Wisconsin University, if you live around Iowa State, they have really big meat labs, and you'll be surprised, they might be open to letting you take a sample or send them a sample, and they'll test it for shelf stability. They won't all do this, but if you can get in touch with one of those professors there, everyone I've dealt with are super nice guys. I mean, their job is to help people process meat. Some of them definitely will help and do that for you. So you'll at least know, like if you make a batch of 50 pounds of jerky, you might be able to send them 4 ounces or less, say, hey, would you mind testing this for shelf stability? And then you know on the rest of it. Because your other option is a couple of $1,000s for a water activity meter, and pH meter, we're not going to worry too much about that with jerky. With jerky, we're just worried about water activity. But if we're doing snack sticks, it's a combination of both of them. The drier it is, the higher our pH is. The lower our pH is, the more water it can have. So those two things go hand in hand. I'll bring you some Dr. Pepper jalapeno jerky I made if you give me some jerky you made. Sounds good? Absolutely, 100% we'll do that. I've started recently using a pellet smoker. I was very much looking forward to that slicer giveaway because hand slicing jerky is a pain. Yeah, absolutely. Victorinox sells something called sold something called the Precise Slice. And this was the best thing that we found for hand cutting jerky. Basically, it's got a blade guard here that you can adjust how far it sits from the knife. This really will help you get consistent thickness on your jerky, but it does have to be fairly frozen. But I mean, it's kind of the same thing with a slicer. You want to partially freeze your meat before you use any retail slicer. It's just going to make it go through cleaner. You won't end up with as big of a tail. But I believe they've discontinued these. So I'm sorry to show it to you and tell you can't buy it. But so I'm sure there's other things like that out in the market. Those really do work. Weston had one once that was like 2 boards and you sliced through. That was terrible. I could never get that to work even a little bit. So Gary Scales says, buyer beware, horrible customer service, ordered $400, never received tracking or product. UPS says delivered. Rudest customer service. Gary, very sorry about that. I will talk to Austin about that. We're a small family company. There's more people working here now than used to, but I started out in our customer service department. So I apologize for that. We will definitely look into that. Yeah, no, Gary Ty, you're good, no worries. I know I've said it a few times, but we're gonna be getting Camp Chef woodwind pellet grills in, and as soon as that comes in, I mean, I've got meat I'm grinding up tomorrow for another purpose, but I'm 100%, that's all earmarked for smoked sausage, summer sausage, snack sticks, and then eventually jerky on just the pellet grill, because I know that's what a lot of you guys have at home. We're going to probably just start it right at that. We'll start the video saying, hey, if you want to learn all the steps up to now, we'll point you back to an older video. There's no reason to run through it all again. But we'll go over time, temperature. Are we going to prop the lid to bleed off some of that smoke to start? What's going to happen with airflow? Are we going to be able to get a good drying phase in? And then another thing that's coming in is a vertical smoker that is pellet operated, which could be a really, really good thing to use. You'd get the ease of propane or gas with still the flavor of smoke. So that really could be something nice. We're looking forward to those two things for sure. Yep, that's what I was talking about, Sinister. We're getting those Camp Chef, the vertical smoker. I believe we're getting 2 versions of the pellet grill in, and then a bunch of accessories to them. They hopefully will be in next week. The real nice thing about Camp Chef is we'll be able to sell them online. So in the past, we've had pellet grills, but we just haven't been doing anything with videos for them because we can't sell the ones that we carry in our retail store. We can't sell them online. So I'm not going to do free advertising for somebody if they don't let us sell it online. And Camp Chef seems to want to. And a couple of the reviews I saw looked really good. So I'm definitely buying one and replacing my one at home, which is the current model we have that we can't sell online with. So Gary says, can somebody school me on pellet smokers? I've always heard that it's better to use traditional wood chunk smoker due to the glues, chemicals used to make pellets. So Gary, that definitely depends on where you're buying your pellets from. We carry our brand, we carry Green Mountain and a couple of other smaller ones. My understanding, I know, I can't even say that. I've been told that ours that are Walton's brands do not have any type of glue. It's all pressure, kept together with, you know, when they're making it, they just push it together super hard. They put it under incredible amounts of pressure, however they do it. I also believe that like Green Mountain, all of those brands, I don't think any of them use glue. I think, and I can't verify this, I think what happens there is people get confused with the pellets that are for a home heater. Those you definitely don't want to cook on. They have chemicals, they have glue to keep everything together. That is definitely not to go in your pellet smoker. I've had a pellet smoker for 4 years now, and I absolutely love it. I don't want to go back to propane, and I just don't have the patience to set up charcoal and wood. I just don't. And I want to be done with something when I'm done with it. I mean, I'd spend enough time here cleaning up. I don't want to clean up grills at home. Now, a pellet smoker, you do have to vacuum it out every once in a while. I usually do it every third or fourth cook. If I'm doing a super long smoke, I might clean it out right after that. But that's just, you take the grills off, you take the heat and the drip tray off, and then you vacuum up the ash. That's really all it takes. It's a matter of minutes. And I always say it gives you about 80% of the flavor of smoke versus using like traditional wood, and it's a tenth of the hassle, probably less than that. I mean, all of them now, you just push a couple of buttons, that gets it to your temperature, and you walk away. You can go play 18. I mean, most of them have 20 pounds or larger hoppers, and it'll just continuously feed pellets in there for you. Most of them you can connect Wi-Fi, so if you wanted to run out and you had to change, if you're doing like a 3-2-1 method, you can change the temperature right from your smartphone. Okay, so yeah, good manufacturers don't have binders, it's just a press fit. Yep. Okay, cool. So everybody's basically at the same. Yeah, and that's another thing. What Sinister MD is saying, there's a lawsuit against a company for using oils for apple, pecan. Apple doesn't impart an apple taste. Cherry doesn't impart a cherry taste. There's always a big misconception there by a lot of people. The reason that the fruit woods, the apple, the cherry, the pecan to a certain extent, are more sought after is because hickory and mesquite have a stronger flavor smoke. They put off a stronger smoke. It's not a different flavor, it's really a different intensity. The reason they're more expensive is they're more sought after. That wood has other uses, obviously growing apples, growing pecans. Almost everything I do at home, whether it be ribs, I reverse sear all my steaks on my pellet grill, all of that gets done with pecan. It's a good mix between, it's not quite as expensive as the apples, the cherries, but it doesn't put off as strong of a smoke as a mesquite or hickory. My problem with my pellet grill when I began was using hickory is I over smoke things, particularly chicken. Like I eat my chicken off of it a lot, and I'm basically just picking up smoke here. I'm not tasting the seasonings. So once I went to pecan, that definitely leveled out. Didn't have that problem anymore. Yep, so again, Sinister MD, fruit woods are just lighter. Yeah, Gary, but cherry's expensive. I mean, I don't even know what our cherry wood is now, but it used to be almost $30-something a bag. Now that's for a 40-pound bag of pellets. And the way I try to explain it to somebody who hasn't had a pellet smoker in the past is a 40-pound bag of pellets will last you about as long as a tank of propane, depending on what you're doing. Oh, okay. No, cherry is $28.99, so not quite as bad as I thought it was, but still, pecan is $25. So, oh, no, our pecan costs as much as our cherry now. Huh. All right. I guess pecan went up. I used to get pecan all the time because it was cheaper. Post oak seems to be something a lot of people are talking about now for whole chunk. As far as I know, there's not a post oak style for pellets, but people seem to be using it a lot recently. Yeah, that could be it. At least I do get the employee discount. Another thing to keep in mind about pellets, there are some vertical smokers that you can't use pellets in. For example, our PK100 has a little burner plate at the bottom that you put a sawdust pan down on, and that generates your smoke from the wood, but the heat is generated from the heating element. You can't put pellets instead of sawdust into that pan. That is too well insulated, and they put off like a different pressure when they burn. We had a guy when I was still back in customer service who actually blew the doors off. I mean, they didn't come all the way off, but it broke the hinges on the side and I think even dented the door. So that is something to keep in mind if you do vertical smoking. Not every vertical smoker can handle both. A lot of oak will be in, like when you're buying cherry, it's not going to be 100% cherry. It's going to be cherry mixed. Often oak is what they'll mix it with. The reason they do that obviously is partly because cherry's expensive and oak's not, so they can not add 100% cherry. But the other thing is they want everything to burn more or less same temperatures. Different woods will burn hotter, so if you had 100% of something that burns real hot and 100% of something that burns not so hot, you know, you'd be struggling to get to a certain temperature, or you'd be going through pellets quicker. So. Bob says, I've had no problem getting a smoke ring. However, the type of wood will make a difference in color. Color, absolutely. Depth of ring, this is another one of those where I walk real gently because I don't know for sure. What I do know is that smoke ring is really a cure ring. Now, it is the smoke that's curing the meat most of the time. But I can prove that by taking a brisket, adding some sodium nitrate to it, and cooking it in a sous vide cooker. I'll get a smoke ring as well. It is the smoke. It's the smoke that's curing the outside of the meat, but it's not as if the smoke's not like penetrating into the meat. It might be curing it faster or more, depending on the different type of smoke, and that might be why we're seeing like a deeper ring. But same thing, I've never had a problem getting a smoke ring with my pellet grill. So what I was saying earlier is, how does everyone do ribs? I like the 3-2-1 method. I cook for 3 hours. I pull, I take foil, lay it down, I put butter, brown sugar on it, wrap them, and then I cook it meat side up. No, meat side down. Yeah, meat side down so it can kind of cook in that butter and stuff. Then do that for 2 hours, take it off, put it back on there for an hour, which usually ends up being 40 minutes. And I love my ribs. So 25 and 75, yep. We did ribs once. We just took a thing of Dr. Pepper, cut the ribs in half, put it into our slow cooker, and it was surprisingly good. Patrick, were you here for that?
Which one?
The Dr. Pepper ribs?
Right before me.
Yeah, they were surprisingly good. Yeah, so I don't know. I assume Sinister MD has tried that since he liked his Dr. Pepper jalapeno jerky. Oh, okay. 3-2-1 for St. Louis, 2-2-1 for Baby Back. Yeah, it does. It takes out all the guesswork. You know exactly when to go. It takes less to monitor it. I just know that I have to be there at 3 hours, 2 hours, and for that last bit, I'm not going anywhere anyways. So, Jawad for books. I don't have it anymore, but there is one called Basics of... Patrick, can you do me a favor? Yeah. Can you get the green book on my desk? Mm-hmm. There's a really good book that unfortunately we're not carrying anymore, but it is...
If you lose sound, here's your battery.
Oh, okay. Am I close?
You're on one.
Okay. Tell me if I lose sound. But yeah, it's a really, really good book. My copy is really heavily thumbed. And unfortunately, we just discontinued it. Just not enough people buy it, but it's really good. Quality production of home meats. And there's a great section on smoking in there. But, I mean, there are tons of other good books, good avenues that you can get more knowledge on it. At Meatgistics, we don't focus a ton on the smoking. Barbecue isn't really what we do. I mean, it's a part of it, but it's not an enormous part of it. We're more focused on, making sausage, making jerky, making summer sausage. It is called Home Production of Quality Meats. Oh, and this is one of the ones I was gonna do something to give away. I don't remember what it was, but I grabbed the last two that were in stock. I gave one away, must not yet have given away the other. So, Jawad, keep an eye on our social media. I'm sure I'll have London do something, and the winner will get this. Great book. A couple other quick things. We're changing the way we're going to do a bunch of stuff. Very little will change for you guys, but we're probably going to start posting more videos to Meatgistics instead of YouTube. So I don't know how most of you are commenting right now. We've tried to push people to coming to waltonsinc.com/live instead of the YouTube. We do that during our monthly giveaways. You can't enter the giveaway from YouTube. You have to enter it from waltonsinc.com/live. Doing it for a couple of reasons. We will still post all of our content to YouTube, but probably we'll start doing it just a little bit differently. Just Meatgistics is growing so quickly. We're going to start focusing some more resources at that because it seems to be doing really well, which is all thanks to you guys. Yep, so Kevin, I agree with that. No wrap does get a better bark. When you put that 2-hour wrap in the middle, you can ruin a bark. I usually kick it up about 15, 20 degrees during that last hour to try to recover some of that. But that's always been Austin's entire thing with not wrapping meat does affect the bark. Yeah, John, you can chat through Walton's Live. There's a chat thing there. waltonsinc.com/live. Yes, all the way. Oh, Papa Sub says, don't have a pellet grill and never will. Only use pellets with the Amazing Tube, Weber, and charcoal all the way. If you have the time and the patience and don't mind the cleanup, there's a reason people have been doing it for thousands of years. I mean, it does definitely impart a very, very specific and good taste. Plus, most pellet grills, I believe the one we're getting in tops out at like 550. Most of them top out around there. Yoder, which is a company that's around here, makes some that go up way above that. I think like the more expensive Traegers go 600 in that range, but 500, you're not getting a great sear. A workaround to that is grill grates. They are made of like aluminum or airplane aluminum or something like that, and they have a very specific shape, so it supposedly funnels the heat up to a straight bar, a grate, that it's supposed to get it 100 degrees hotter than the rest of the grill. I use them on my Green Mountain, and I do get really good sear marks with it, so it does work. Yeah, our store manager was saying that a lot of people were buying the pink butcher paper, I don't know why, the pink one, and doing speed briskets on it, and saying that they were getting great bark with it. I haven't had time to give it a shot. So for Gary, and maybe Papa Sop will care, we are trying right now to get charcoal pellets. There's a Jack Daniel's charcoal pellet. There's a company that we were talking to, and that was one of the things we're going to order from them. I emailed them this weekend on some pricing issues, and I haven't heard back yet. But hopefully we're going to have charcoal pellets here coming soon. As soon as those comes in, we'll definitely do a bunch of testing on those as well. And those are going to be a little bit smaller bags, so they won't be impossible to ship. The 40-pound Walton's pellets, pricing's really good on them, but if you're not local, that can be tough because those are expensive to ship. I thought you might find that interesting. All right, so I'm gonna hang around for a couple minutes, see if anyone has any other questions. Oh, no, one more thing. We didn't talk about shelf life of seasoning. So technically, seasoning isn't gonna go bad. What's gonna happen is it's going to start losing its intensity. Excalibur, for their sausage seasonings, their jerky, all of that, it has a shelf life of 2 years. Now, to get to that 2 years, you need to store it in an airtight bag in, I like to say, a cool but dry place. A pantry, and a cool pantry is a great idea. Putting it in a freezer isn't going to do anything for you. In fact, putting it in a fridge or freezer are risking that it gets exposed to moisture, which it wouldn't, or a level of moisture that it wouldn't if it was in a pantry. Additives are about the same thing. Nitrate is an interesting one because we've talked about gassing out a bunch with nitrite. So nitrite isn't what actually cures the meat. Nitrite breaks down into nitrite, and nitrite breaks down into NO2. And that, N2O? Oh God. One of those two, having a senior moment here. Can't think of it. But that's what actually cures the meat. So what causes it to start breaking down? Because you can have a bag of cure for months and months and months and months and 2 years and it'll be fine. And I always used to think it was the water that was starting it to break down, but apparently you can add cure to like purified water and it won't start gassing out. It's impurities that are present in water and on meat that's going to start that process. That's going to start it gassing out. So, whatever, just a little bit of, I thought it was interesting. But yeah, vacuum sealing your seasoning, whatever seasoning you have left over, is a good idea. There are certain shakers, like specifically the prime rib rub. I don't know if any of you have used that, but I absolutely love taking some ground meat, putting it in a big pot, getting a bunch of that prime rib rub in there. But if you hold it over the pot while steam is coming up and shake it in there, and that gets any moisture in there, it's going to be hard as a rock the next time you go to use it. So make sure you're not adding seasonings like that right over the pot. Put it into a bowl and put it on, or put it in your hand and put it on, but don't hold it over that pot while there's a bunch of heat and steam coming off of it, because that definitely will get into that shaker bottle. All right, awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll be back next week, and then we've got a live stream coming up on February 1st for drawing this present month's winner plus announcing next month's winner, and guaranteed we'll be doing some jerky giveaways on that because I want to crow about it more. Thanks, guys.